Hey, I'm Good Job Dino, and I am a Tribes veteran. For the uninitiated, that means that I am about 80 years old, and 70 of those years have been spent playing primarily one game out of a series of games that may as well have been developed in Hangar 51, and evoke exclamations of, "You still play that?" from friends who have heard you yammer on for years about the good old days, as if you and the members of your clan who sat around on Ventrilo talking about butts survived the Shazbot Wars. By the way, we still play Tribes Vengeance every Thursday and on weekends. Download it, it's free to play, join the Discord. And now there's a new one. And I want to talk about that. It is important to note that as of recording, Tribes 3 is in its alpha build. All criticisms in this video should be seen as a reflection of my investment in the game. I'm going to touch briefly on a few of the game's core aspects and likely take deeper dives into certain topics in future videos. So, what is Tribes? At its simplest, these games are about speed and movement and flying and blasting people while they're moving and flying. The joy and speed of Tribes gameplay has no rival. And how does Tribes 3 handle the speed and the moving and the flying? Mostly by limiting it. Through the first 3 weeks of alpha testing, the most consistent and greatest roar of feedback was regarding the lack of jets and the lack of speed. The playtests launched with speed caps, which changed, kind of, by the third week, and the pool of energy for the jetpack as well as flight control felt lacking throughout. Since the playtests, conversations regarding these issues have evolved to question what the goal of the developers is for the game and what mastery of the core mechanics remains hidden behind the wall of playtime. And since this is becoming such a broad topic with many ins and outs to be aware of, I would like to try and condense all the criticism about movement into what I believe more properly conveys what people mean, which, even for players new to the franchise, I think comes down to that it is difficult to control my character. That there are things that I want to do with my character, which I know are theoretically possible given the mechanics of the game as well as previous experience with first-person shooters. Things as simple as moving around. But I am unable to do these things, and not due to any fault of my own, but because of the limits imposed upon me built into the game. Regardless of all the fun that is possible, it too often feels like the game is your older brother who is stuck babysitting you when he'd rather be out with his girlfriend. I want to go higher, you say. Too bad. I want to go faster. Too bad. I want to respawn. Maybe later. The game entices you with a jetpack, skiing, hills, verticality, only to stay just tantalizingly out of reach with its offerings. There are moments where the movement clicks, especially if you're in light armor or after a disc launch or two, and those moments are as fun as they are fleeting. The solution? Keep it simple, stupid. Lean into your strengths. If you want to make the game where you can soar from hill to hill and blast away opponents mid-flight, then just make that game. And where the ability to control your character within that game is the most vital is in the verticality a title like this so uniquely promises. Not only have current iterations felt lacking to veterans of the gameplay, but jetpacks or their equivalents are no longer a fringe concept to gamers overall. Popular titles like Halo have attempted it, and one of the most prolific games in recent memory utilizes verticality and control as a primary mechanic, and that's Rocket League. And when the latest game in a franchise about flying in the air feels more difficult to control than a game about playing soccer with rocket cars, it seems worth consideration to make whatever the vision is for the game end up feeling as crisp and complete and fun as possible. One possible means of achieving this end is to borrow from Tribes games of the past. Legion's Overdrive is sort of a Tribes adjacent, and it had a dedicated downjet, which I believe would feel very fitting in Tribes 3. Instead of floating past a downslope that you misjudged, the downjet helps with keeping up your momentum. Rather than passing by your flag, assuming you got that high, you could jet down for the capture. The greatest addition to the franchise ever made to motion, though, has to be the grappling hook in Tribes Vengeance. It aids you in getting up higher, hitting a slope. You can change direction quickly, even in midair if there's something to attach to, allowing for creative flag routing, improvising, and maneuvering in combat. Pulling back while hooked propels you forward for a burst of speed, and the dynamism of the grappling hook allows for more variety and creativity in map building. In Tribes Vengeance, the grappling hook takes up a weapon slot, which isn't so terrible since during Tribes 3 playtests I mostly forgot about my third weapon anyways. But for this game, a similar item could be implemented in all sorts of ways. Similar to Legion's downjet, the hook could have a dedicated button and be on a short timer after use. I emphasize short here. In Vengeance, the hook shoots when you click and then releases when it is broken or you click again. It could instead be a held action, shooting out when you click and releasing when you do. I am excited for and have had a lot of fun with Tribes 3 so far. And while I am in no way attached to necessarily copying and pasting things from old games, I do feel that this latest Tribes game is currently at risk of falling behind its predecessors before it's even gotten started. There are numerous ways motion and verticality can be interacted with in these games, and I'll likely make more videos as playtests go on and the game starts to get closer to release about just that. But in leaving this topic for now, I want to make clear my feeling that more control will not only feel better, but that it is a necessity in a game like this. And perhaps most important for this game in particular, to not feel like it is lagging behind a game 20 years its senior. Which brings us to our secondary means of interacting with motion in Tribes, the blasting portion of blasting people while they are moving and flying. Your armory in Tribes 3 is dictated by the class of armor that you are using. Light, medium, and heavy have their own versions of weapons, as well as some that are unique to each class. Classes themselves are something I will touch on more in depth another time, as that's where I'll look more closely at grenades, packs, and perks. For now, I'm more interested in answering the question of, are the weapons fun? To which my answer is an emphatic, mostly. The weapons seem more in line with complementing the game's current direction of being less aerial-based. Weapons like the grenade launcher, mortar, crossbow, and gladiator all have arcing shots of various speeds that, while they will do more damage on a direct hit, find most of their use dealing splash damage on the ground. The spin fuser is here, of course, in all of its forms. A weapon classic to the franchise, representing the precision and skill expression that makes the Tribe series so unique. A few good mid-airs and you too will forever be hooked into the obscurity of tribal veteranhood, always chasing that next blue plate. There's the chain gun, which has its rightful place despite much headaching around the weapon's ability to tear away at people's health bars in the right hands. And all of these weapons have a history within the franchise and a promising future ahead once they feel good to use. Currently, they all feel some sort of slow. A couple in their actual use, but all in reloading. Getting another shot ready can be such a hair-pulling process, especially if you make the mistake of switching your weapons after firing one or throwing a grenade, interrupting the all-important and engrossing reload animation. At which point, your weapon may not actually reload until you attempt to fire it again. And I get it, games have come a long way. Seeing how your weapon actually works in theory, with a full animation illustrating its reload properties, is neat, but I'd rather just fire the damn thing. Some weapons are heavier and should perhaps take more time to reload than others, but they should all actually reload faster. For the most part, the weapons I haven't mentioned are because I find them to be somewhat more baffling inclusions. I mean, here we are with jetpacks, mobile mortar launchers, the spin fuser, magic ice skates, and a double-barrel shotgun? Some dinky little pistol? Not only are they totally forgettable for their damage output, but where is the creativity here? Weapons like these, in conjunction with the seeming favor towards being grounded, make the game feel less like Tribes and more like Call of Duty with jetpacks. Now, I may be shown in time that they have their place, and maybe you even get a couple clutch kills with them, but I'd still be willing to bet that we could do a lot better, especially in regards to how weapons interact with the verticality and speed of the core game. Since it's where I've spent the most time in the series, I want to look back again at Tribes Vengeance to highlight the rocket pods and the buckler. Both stand out for their ability to be controlled in the air after being fired. The pods shoot off as 6 individual tiny rockets which cluster together as they reach the apex of their range. Most of the damage happens to targets further away, but it requires more precision. The buckler, on the other hand, doesn't go as far and acts more like a remote control boomerang, with the ability to damage someone twice if you're able to cut through them on the launch and return. The buckler has a double use in Tribes by being able to bounce and launch friend or foe off into the stratosphere. Like with the grappling hook, a copy and paste solution is not what I'm proposing. Just pointing out that there are possible and missing creative and fun ways to make weapons that interact with the game as it is meant to be played, taking into consideration all the height and speed that is at its core. And since I hate to point out a problem without proposing any solution, I'll even show off a weapon concept I've been playing with: the propulsor majig. It would likely be a light-only weapon which deals no damage, but holding down the trigger causes a conal force blast. The longer you hold, the stronger and larger the blast. Using it on enemies pushes them away, allowing for flag clears or quick getaways. Using it against the ground or a grounded object pushes you away from it based on the strength of the blast. Perhaps it could even repel projectiles. It would be an energy-based weapon, so no reloading, but also no refueling. How much energy you start with is how much you have to ration. And this is just a playful concept. There would be numerous ways to tweak a design like this, as well as invent brand new ones. I mean, this is Tribes. We rocket off into the skies and rain death from above. Pistols and shotguns are for walking around in close combat war zones, and that's probably where they ought to be left. And finally, here I'd like to share what is my favorite part of the game so far. This right here. Whoever did this is my kind of people. Laying down the boom, then throwing up the horns is just cool shit. And more than anything else for this game, I think the greatest contribution it can make is just having cool shit and being fun to play. For instance, I am not a fan of CTF in Tribes. I go with it because it's the most popular game mode, and I find ways to have fun and contribute to my team, but really I'm just dealing with it. And I absolutely loathe rabbiting. When I have to do it myself, or am fruitlessly chasing someone, I'll usually opt to just respawn or give the flag to someone else and wait for it all to end. Apart from just having other game modes that people enjoy like Rabbit, Team Deathmatch, Arena, and Ball, which I'm going to talk about in another video as well, I think game modes are a great place where Tribes 3 can harbor that sense of just having a blast. Movement shooters have forever had mutators and odd game additions like Instagib or Big Head mode. I think that where Tribes should be following in step with games like League of Legends, Rocket League, and even Call of Duty is in having fun game modes that are seasonal or just around for a limited time. Let's take a look at something like the Big Heads mode. It's a race to have the biggest head by getting kills, but getting those kills would also increase your hitbox, making you a bigger target for other people and getting mid-aired much more easily. So your path to victory is also what makes you easier to kill. And you could have game modes where you reduce the gravity, where you make everything rapid fire. I mean, with a game like this amount of freedom in movement, the possibilities for fun are limited only by the imagination and the will to venture into it. And finally, when it comes to cool shit, there's customization. Skinning for armors and weapons is a tradition as old as time in Tribes. A tradition which has been carried on in the form of loot boxes, skins, and accessories in other games. While I am in some ways in favor of these things for Tribes 3, I don't particularly want to get into it now as it inevitably drags in the beaten, ugly corpse of microtransactions. Instead, I want to talk about Final Fantasy XIV. Not for this, but for this. HUD customization. The ability to clean up or organize the UI as each player sees fit. Turning off or on assets, making them smaller or larger, and placing them where they will be the most beneficial. I, for one, am terrible at glancing too far away from my crosshairs. In Tribes Vengeance, I have these center bars without which I would almost never be aware of my health or jetpacks. I am also a lifetime member of MA, and as such, I want to be notified of all the mid-airs I land, all the mid-air kills I get, how long they were, and I want them right smack in the center of my screen, leaving me ready to sit back and crank the blue plate slot machine. Tribes games typically have the unfortunate timeline of the promising startup, the full server lobbies, and the eventual and all too early fall from grace, which is when the dedicated player base mills about like zombies hungry for MAs before picking up the bones and scrounging together a couple hoops to jump through in order to keep playing the game that they loved. So, while this may seem like a bit of a doomy wish, give players the freedom of customization early on. Give us our fun. Give us Tribes.